Yeah, number 16 is wrong, but regardless, what got me to think that is there is so much Fox players. There's a lot of Sheik players. There's a lot of Falco, a lot of Falcon, even a lot of Peach and Puffs. But and somehow amongst all of the common top characters, Marth is by far like Marth is notably not as notable, not as common. And that kind of begs the question, like, despite how much is talked about that Marth might be the best character, especially since our number one player is a Marth main, is he bad? And like, why is the gap between each Marth really big? Like, I think this is definitely incorrect. I'm somewhere in the top 10, but still, like number 10, number 9, and number 1, that gap is ginormous. And then there's the gap between me and Logan. This is just one guy's opinion, so like obviously this rank number 16 is wrong, but whether or not, that's not really the main point. It's like the main point though is that there's like a huge gap between like each Marth. Not to mention very few Marths. And for a character that's supposedly really broken, it's like how come he's nowhere near as common as like Fox, Sheik, Falco, Falcon, Peach, Puff. Um and I guess like less so Puff, but like Marth is like the third or the fourth most common character on Slippy if you look up Slipipedia. He's a popular character. Like there and Sheik is not at all common. But somehow like the Sheik numbers are like way more. And it's like is Marth even a good character if he's like this uncommon? And obviously I'm kind of clickbaiting a little like yes, Marth is amazing. He still might in fact be the best character even though like there's not that much, but it's like why is he so uncommon? Like why is it just me, Zane, and Logan? And there's like no Marths in between. And a few explanations I could think of is, well, for one, like a lot of the other Marths kind of low key retired, high key retired as well. You know, our old guard like Mewtwo King, PP, Pew Pew, Rishi, that's four Marths right there, four top caliber Marths that are not active and redacted. Five top caliber Marths. Um, so what could have been eight is just shrunk down to three. And but even without that, like look at the new blood for each of these guys. Like, cause like all the new bloods come and go. There's always gonna be new players who get replaced. Like Sora's a new name, Nikki's a new name, Zamu, Zuppy, Null. They're all new names. Uh, Look at the Falcons, like Salt, Mech, Android Zero, previous known as Soof now. Their new names. Fiction, Bobby, Albert Frenzy, their new names. Like you have new names replacing these characters, and the two new names from Marth is me and Logan. And it's like, why, if Marth is so good, why is it that, we don't see the Crimson Blur in this list? And I think the reason why is because Marth is so obviously really good. I mean, fuck, our number one player is ranked number one. Uh, but I think the reason why this is because Marth is the like because people won because Zane's our best player. People are more than ever preparing for Fox, more than ever. I mean, it's like when HBox was the best. Like you didn't see very many other puffs, in part because they're preparing so much for HBox that it just naturally also eliminated other puffs. Like people's foxes were getting so good to beat HBox that it might as well also taken out the other puffs. I don't know. Just like a lot other just like theory reasons. I don't know for sure if that really applies to Puff or whatnot. But with Marth in particular, because if you don't know certain rules to uh for like all Marth's matchups, you will get blown up. Like if Marth's only enemy was just Fox and Falco, then we would see way more Marths. But because he has to worry about, Sheiks, Puffs, Falcons, Pikachu, Ices, Yoshi, um, those are matchups where it's like Marth does well in all those matchups, but because he can't just because the way how he plays each of those matchups is so varied, even between Fox and Falco alone. Like I have vastly completely different game plans between Fox and Falco, and Sheik, and Falcon, and Peach, and Puff. And if you saw my analysis earlier, like there isn't really that much overlap between most characters. Like I have wildly different rules for each characters. Like there's some few themes such as threat ranges and like platform stuff. But for the most part, it was very different between each characters. And with more and more people preparing for Zane and like just like getting better and better versus Marth, that like hurts newer Marths that do not know how to play each of his matchups properly. And I think Marth is probably like he's one of the characters that gets pretty hard punished if you don't know the matchup well. Like how often have we seen Marths get like run into a Yoshi and they get just destroyed because they don't know like all the like little details. And at the same time, how often do you see that happen to like a Fox and a Sheik, Um, because like, those characters have like a way easier time killing Yoshi, whereas like Marth, if you don't know that shit, like if you don't know how to like you're just gonna let Yoshi live to 250 and like you're gonna get hit a lot. And it's like I think that's why Marth isn't as common. Because like people play Marth. Like, the excuses people gave to Puff back in the day is that like, oh, nobody likes Puff, so that's why she has a small player base. And it's like, I mean, there is like a point to be made there because like, if you look at Slippypedia, Puff is one of the more uncommon characters, despite her being more common than Peach, I believe. But Marth is like literally a top 4 play character. And it makes no sense why there's less Marths than Peaches and Puffs. And it's like vastly way lower amount than Sheik is like twice, like Marth is at least twice as much popular than Sheik, and Sheik vastly outnumbers Marth for whatever reason. And a lot more Falcons, a lot more Falcos, a lot more Foxes. Um, so it's like definitely there's a player base for Marth, and I think because he plays each of his matchups really differently, and if you like screw up in like one small aspect of it, he gets hard destroyed. I mean, like how often do you hear from like you see like top players pick up a secondary Marth, and it's typically really really good versus Spaceys, but then would get absolutely shat on in like other matchups, you know? So it's like I don't think Marth, even though like he might be technically easier, if you don't know his rules like really, really, really well, you're gonna get blown up. And therefore he's not straightforward. Like, for instance, like for Fox, it's actually quite straightforward how you improve with him. That's not saying that Fox is easy to improve. That's in fact it's far from the opposite. Like, he's one of the most technical characters. Like, um, if I could give a concrete example, for instance, like it's easier to ledge dash with Fox than it is with Marth because if you want any glitch with Marth, you need to be frame perfect with like cliff weight and double jump and like the ledge dash angle for like only one glint, whereas Fox could be in multiple frames of cliff weight and have plenty of glint to spare. However, just because it's much more straightforward for Fox to ledge dash, that doesn't mean it's easier because like, if you mess up Fox's ledge dash, you die. But that makes the value of solo practice with Fox because his game plan is also quite straightforward as well. It's like, oh yeah, you could grind out wave shines for easy damage and like get up throw up airs. Maybe even play a 50-50. Juggle with full out bears a little. And like if you're fast, you know how to play positions somewhat straightforwardly. You just win in a lot of Fox's matchups. You just have to execute it really well, which is why like, you could solo practice a ton with Fox and get results because his game plans are much more straightforward. Whereas like Marth, not nearly as technical as Fox, at least in terms of like raw APM button presses. You still have to be very precise, and execution is still really important with Marth. But because like game plans are much 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 more important from Marth, and if you even mess up like a minor part of your game plan, he gets blown up really hard for it. So it's like it's just a fact that Marths are probably getting more and more punished for not having a perfect game plan versus other characters, and I think that's why we see less of them. Whereas like other characters, like solo practice gives a lot because while they might be worse characters like Falcon, but if you're simply if you practice your speed and your flow charts, it's quite straightforward for them to improve. Again, that's not saying that they're easy. No character in this game is easy, but definitely I do think some characters are more straightforward to practice than others. And I think that's why like we see characters that really benefit from solo practice, like Falcon, Falco, She, kind of, Fox, and Peach. I don't really know about Puff, if I'm being honest. Like that one's kind of an anomaly, and like you could definitely like not count solo battle if you really didn't want to, because he hasn't attended an NA tournament. But like, yeah, like I think like game plans are becoming much and much more important. And the reason why Marth looks bad at times is because they have a flawed game plan, and or like they have a good game plan, but like it's just like one small part of it's a little off, and then they just like get blown up for it. So I don't know. That's my thoughts onto why it seems like Marth can seem pretty bad. I mean, as we saw from Summit, like Zane had a game plan where he tried to run off up B versus Sheik, and he died. He didn't do it. Like literally, practical tasks like made a tweet where it's like, oh yeah, if Zane like did this proper up B, he would have won versus Plup. And it's like, wow, so he just messed up this one very minor thing and he lost. It's like, damn. As to and again, this also applies to every other characters. Like obviously, every character has a game plan. Um, it's just that I think Marth has a little bit more steps across all of his matchups. Plus, like, sometimes killing isn't quite so straightforward in non-spacey matchups. And I don't know. To be honest, I don't even know. Like, I'm not gonna sit and pretend that I know for sure that like I know why there's absolutely no other Marths. And it's like, to be honest, I'm quite confused why there's not as many Marths. I just do think it's interesting that that he's just so uncommon amongst the top players. And like, feel free to theorize yourself, because I'm not even sure if my explanation even totally makes sense, and I would buy other explanations too. So, is Marth bad? No, he's not bad. Just because Zane loses one tournament, or there's not that many Marths in top level, I think he's one of the best characters, in fact. But maybe not so straightforward to improve is like my current theory.